The Oh So Lovely Talk Show. The Oh So Lovely Talk Show. So lovely. So welcome to the So Lovely Talk Show.
Thank you.
So this is a slightly different episode. So normally Ollie and I, we interview people or we just chat a lot of rubbish together. But we've decided to go down a slightly different route because actually we thought we've never actually interviewed each other. And although I know a lot about you, I've known you for so long, I've worked with you, we've done so many things together.
Yeah.
Actually, I've never had the opportunity to dig deep. And I know you've got a lot to share. And I know from the many conversations we've had, you've got so much, I think, that you have to say on things that you've experienced that I think would really benefit others. You're very open, you're very honest. And I think a lot of people will find that very valuable. I'm very lucky I get to hear your open and honest conversation on a regular, but I think not everyone is as privileged as me. So I'd like to share that. Lucky me. So I would love to have a chat with you, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love to. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So firstly, do you want to maybe just give like a brief overview of you, who you are?
Yeah. I started hairdressing later on in my life. I was 24 when I started hairdressing. I studied fashion at Nottingham Trent University beforehand. I wanted to work in the fashion industry. I came out of that a little delusioned, like we all are at a young age. I sort of thought, oh, I'm going to step into this amazing fashion role, went to work in London and hated every minute of it. I swiftly moved back to Brighton and kind of went on a little bit of a downward spiral, I guess. I came out at the age of 23, so I was sort of dealing with my own identity crisis as well as not really knowing what I was doing with my life. And then shortly after that, I kind of navigated into the world of hairdressing. I started in a very small independent salon in Brighton. I loved it the moment I got in that door, working with people. We could be creative and create instant results, getting those dopamine hits, having that connection with people, but feeling very much part of a community. And I think I found at that time, I'm probably looking back on that now, where we are now with sort of neurodivergence and people within our industry are so eclectic and a lot of from minorities. I think actually I didn't realize it, but I think I found my tribe early on. I was working with an openly gay guy who was a drag queen. I was working with people who accepted that around them, and then people coming in and sort of celebrating that environment within the salon. So I think that's where I suddenly felt at home and accepted. Um, and I then transitioned to another independent salon. I felt like I needed to grow, and I am very, very much someone who looks for change. I would like when I sort of feel I'm bored, and it happened a lot in relationships. I'll be bored and like I need to move on. But I got bored quite quickly, so I'd had to find the next challenge and find the next challenge. And sometimes the challenges were really challenging. And I went from a small independent salon, then went and varded at Trevor Sorby, which broke me, but absolutely made me a very strong hairdresser. But it really opened up my eyes to the industry. And then I went from there to headmasters and actually went into this incredible world of hairdressing and seeing so much more that was out there to do. I then joined the art team, worked with you and some very talented people, Gareth, Jonathan, Carolina, some very, very beautiful people, and created yet another amazing community. And traveled to London from Brighton nearly every day of the week. And that was sort of where it got to a point where I felt like I needed to make another change, which led me to opening the salon that I've got now.
What a lovely journey. So I think I knew kind of a fair bit of that, but I think what kind of came to my mind there was you mentioned that when you first came into the hair industry, you found a salon and you felt accepted and
Yeah.
you felt like you belonged. Would you have said prior to that, did you feel like you weren't accepted or that you didn't really belong, or did you feel out of place, would you say?
Um, so I went when I went to university, I found a really great community there.
Mm-hmm.
But I clearly was hiding my sexuality,
Mm-hmm.
or I was just, and actually in the 90s, and we're talking like early 90s, so we're talking um, still in the sort of aftermath of the AIDS pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
AIDS crisis, and sort of actually homosexuality was still very frowned upon. And I wanted to have the wife and the kids. You know, that was the dream thing to have.
Mm.
I did and still have this amazing woman in my life. We met at university and we were in a relationship for 3.5 years. And I am a very true believer that love has no boundaries. And I truly felt like I'd met my soulmate and the person that I want to spend the rest of my life with.
Mm.
But deep, deep down, I wasn't being honest with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also at the same time, the community I was in, so that there was queer people within my degree, so I was kind of around that, but it
Yes.
wasn't necessarily.
Accepting it for yourself.
I wasn't accepting it for
Mm.
myself, and I think it wasn't until I eventually split up with my girlfriend that I had to. I was then faced with the raw reality of where I was, and I think it just made me feel a lesser person because sort of at that time, at this point, it was towards the end of the 90s, although things were a bit more accepted. You know, we couldn't have civil partnerships, gay men couldn't get married, you couldn't have a family, so everything that I aspired to be just wasn't really
Mm.
on the table.
Mm.
So in a way I kind of almost felt like a second class citizen in a way. It sort of felt like I was in that kind of, I was ranked down in sort of cultural acceptance.
Mm.
So when I walked into a salon and felt around people that loved me, and actually they didn't know my past, they didn't know about my previous life, so it was the first time they'd met me.
Yeah.
That was the time when they were
That's who
like,
you are.
that's who I am.
Yeah.
And I was on this huge self-discovery about who the hell I was at that time, because I it's almost like going through puberty again, because you've got to learn to date again, you've got to learn a whole new sort of love language, so to speak,
Yeah.
let alone come to terms with how you feeling about yourself
Yeah.
and about, your relationships with your parents and your siblings and the people who exist in your life around you.
Mm.
So then being in a community that suddenly just go, oh, we love you, Ollie, you're the
Mm.
best thing, you're going to be great at this. I was like, I found my tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then would the conversation come up often, would you say, about your past, or did you kind of prefer not to kind of talk about it, or how did you feel at that point?
um I talked about it.
Mm.
Um, you've already said I'm very open, and I do feel like sometimes, perhaps as a hairdresser, you can be a little bit, especially when you're younger and more naive, you're a bit more open than you should be about your life. And I think I probably, and I think this is sometimes a connection you can have with a client, that suddenly the client can think that they're more of a friend than actually a client relationship. So potentially, I probably gave too much information away,
Mm-hmm.
but I felt accepted. I felt like I was able to talk about it in that the walls of that salon and feel safe.
Mm.
Yeah,
Would you have said so at that time? Did you have like a kind of strong idea of where you saw Ollie going?
not at all.
No. So.
I had no idea where I was going, and I think this is something I'm really working on now, is that I do think as creatives and as hairdressers, we do live in the now all the time,
Mm.
especially in our younger years, is that we don't plan for the future. We don't think about our end game and and not necessarily the end game, but what's your financial situation going to be. And again, I think because I felt lower level in life, I was like, I'm just going to career on. I've been terrible with finances. I mean, I got blacklisted by my own bank at that time in my
Mm.
career. Like, I was so shit with how I used my money. I got into so much trouble. So I literally probably had so little self-worth at that time
Mm.
that I was just happy to live in the now and just be creative and just live this sort of lovely crazy life that I was living at that time. So I never really felt like I had a plan. I think the only time I felt like I wanted to move forward in my career was when the salon that I was in was lovely and it felt like a family, but it wasn't moving anywhere. There was no drive or push for things to move on. It was like we were doing competitions and we were doing really, really well, but I was a bit like, well, what's next?
Mm.
What's next? And they were happy to just be plodding along doing their 9 to 5 and doing back-to-back highlights. But I wanted more. I wanted to perfect my craft, and that's when I was like, Trevor Sorbie was coming to Brighton.
Mm.
Maybe this is an opportunity for you to perfect my craft. So that was the only time I kind of really thought about pushing myself forward, and making myself a point in my career that could project myself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you think changed then? So from the Ollie that maybe had low self-worth and, didn't really believe in himself, to then thinking, what was it that made you go, oh, actually, I could push myself further. There could be more to this.
because I'd done fashion and being creative and constructing something, there's always something you can do to make that construction better.
Mm-hmm.
So quite often when you're making a garment, you probably make it 3 or 4 times before you do your final
Mm-hmm.
um, piece. So there's always a sort of a path that leads you to an end. And even at that point, there's probably more you could do to it, but there's a time restriction, there's a budget, and there's something that stops you from doing that. And I think with hairdressing, because it was kind of, and especially at the late 90s and early 2000s, this sort of, there wasn't really much thought. You just got in, you did your highlights, it was back to back. It was a day of, you know 10 clients, no breaks and everything like that, so everything really kind of got planned or thought out. It was just in the now.
Mm.
And it wasn't until I kind of got to the point where it's like there must be more to this. And then I think because we were doing competition work and I was seeing other people do really well. And I think actually, I tell you what it was, I was an ID artist, one of the first ID artists, and we went to Berlin. It was the Love Parade, so it was Pride
Mm.
in Berlin.
Wow.
It
Yeah.
was crazy.
Mm.
I mean, we didn't sleep the whole weekend, but I saw Trevor Sorbie's art team do a show, and I was like,
Wow.
wow, wow. And there was another European artist that was on at the same time, but I suddenly just saw sort of a different world of hairdressing that I hadn't seen before,
Mm.
because I'd just been in my little bubble within the salon, maybe at a colour trophy or been at a something, but nothing international. But then seeing a British hairdresser do something on a different stage, I was blown away by that.
Mm.
And I think that's probably why I was like, and that was before Trevor Sorbie were moving to Brighton. So it was sort of that seed was planted then. So when obviously they came to Brighton, I was a bit like, ah,
This is for me.
yeah.
So you then entered into the world of Trevor Sorby,
Mm.
and then you were there, and then you joined Headmasters. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I did my vardering in Covent Garden, which I think if when you think about training now, and I was literally out on the streets pulling people off the street to do my haircuts. I had to pull all my own models in and really work hard, and obviously then have to pass my test. And I was just cutting as well, so it was no colouring,
Mm.
whereas I was used to doing colouring and cutting beforehand. I passed my vardering, went to work in the Brighton salon, and I totally felt out of my depth. I felt like that's probably my first ever feeling of imposter syndrome
Mm.
looking back,
Yeah.
because I just didn't feel good enough. And yeah, I was out of my comfort zone. So I didn't stay there for long and I went back to my old salon.
Mm.
And that was when I was like, I, I did training there and I managed it. But then I was just like, again, I'm still not going to get anywhere here. And then Headmasters opened in Brighton.
Mm.
And then Hugo, who worked at Trevor Sorbie, was the manager. Was the one who opened the Headmasters Brighton, so it was a connection,
Right.
and that's when sort of everything kind of fell into place.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting because, as you said, that was your first experience of imposter syndrome. But I guess imposter syndrome, as we've discussed in previous episodes,
Mm.
can actually be a helpful tool to,
Yeah.
you know, drive you forward.
Yeah.
But I guess if you don't know how to deal with it, it can also do the complete opposite.
Yeah.
So I guess from now, I'm sure you've dealt with imposter syndrome many times.
Still am.
But I think probably, yeah, it's happening right now. But no, I think that time, the first time you chose to just, move away and not push yourself, I guess. But then now from then on, you'll be able to kind of use that in a really
Yeah.
positive light, I guess.
Yeah.
And use it to your own advantage.
Yeah.
So you're in Headmasters.
Mm-hmm.
You're working in the salon. Yeah.
Yes. So I um it was one of those sort of like perfect storms, I feel like, because I walked in there, saw Hugo. There was a couple other people out there that I knew, and it was just like, oh, this is great. I came with a full clientele, um, and so I my succession was very, very quick
Mm.
within headmasters. Um, uh, I was then sort of asked to audition for the art team, which blew my mind because I was like, I didn't know I could do that.
Mm.
But yeah, but I do remember doing the audition and coming back and lying on the bed going, "Oh God, I don't know if I can do that," because it maybe sort of the the traveling up to Covent Garden for my fathering for Trevor Sorby, I was a bit triggered about that whole feeling of like, oh, that kind of imposter syndrome feeling.
Mm.
But I remember my mum saying, you've got to do this, and I'm glad I did because it just took me on a whole new journey because I thought I was going to be working 5 days a week in a salon in Brighton, but ended up working 4 days a week in London, all over the UK
Mm.
and Europe.
That's so from there, you're obviously in the art team, and I think just before you left the art team, you were in the position of art team manager.
Yes. So I think it's interesting how we all it's like when you asked me earlier about how did I see my future,
Mm.
and I think in my 20s I didn't really have that, but when I got to my 30s and was in the art team and then working with yourself and Gareth and the art team, I felt like there was sort of suddenly this sort of community and a real opportunity, and there was probably, and I didn't realize it at the time, um, a shift in me because I would have moved to London.
Mm.
I would have moved to London to be part of that all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm married and had a dog and a
Mm.
life in Brighton.
Yeah. A
Um,
divide.
I had a divide,
Mm-hmm.
and I just drove hard to make that work. And quite often, when with that happening, I would be dropping the ball with my relationship with my husband, and my sort of life at home would become second to what I was doing in London. I wanted to go for drinks after we had an art team meeting. I wanted to go out, and then I'd be like, "Oh, I'll just push it to the next train. I'll just push it to the next
Mm.
train," and then all of a sudden I'm back at 1 o'clock in the morning, and my husband at the time was flying, so he was cabin crew, so he wasn't always at home,
Mm.
and then we also had this responsibility of making sure someone was there for the dog, or so I was feeling quite pulled in different directions. So I was very career driven, and we became art ambassadors for the company. We were driving education. We were traveling, doing education abroad. And then the opportunity came to become an art team manager. And I thought, this is my chance. And I think probably looking back now, it was definitely a step away from the creative that I was actually prepared to let go.
Mm.
But I think also that really challenged me was then actually my role with you, Gareth, and Jonathan changed because I wasn't I was part of us, but
Mm.
I was suddenly in a different role. And I was then at head office all the time, having to sit in meetings that took me away from us as a creative.
Mm.
And I suddenly felt like I was in a position and a role that I probably didn't really want.
Mm.
But I put myself there and I said yes. And I was like, I'm going to still try and do it. I'm going to push forward. But in my heart of hearts, it wasn't really the position for me. And I loved being with you guys. I think that was what kept me there for as long as I did, was because I couldn't see my future without being in a community where we lifted each other up. I think regardless of how we felt, whenever we got together, I mean, people could hear us walk down the hallway from the laughter and the buffoonery that would have gone on, but the energy that kind of we created was so intoxicating, and I
Mm.
think that's what carried me through so much of my insecurities and my displacement and feeling that I wasn't in the right place. It wasn't until we got a show at a big event, and I got up in the morning and I sat on the end of bed and I just burst into tears.
Mm.
And my husband said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I just don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know how much more I can give to this." I got dressed. I got on the train. got into that meeting, it was when the iPads were the big thing. I had my iPad and my email pinged, and it was one from Ollie, and it just said, "I'll support you in anything that you want to do if you're as long as you're happy.
Mm.
But if you're not happy, how can I support you?"
Mm.
And I just knew in that very moment I had to leave, because as much as I thought I was happy and I thought I was driving my career in the way I wanted it to be.
Mm.
Um, I wasn't. I wasn't. I just wasn't. And my husband. It had to come from my husband to say that for me to realise I've got to make a decision here.
That's the thing. I think the thing is there's a lot at stake. You know, it wasn't just you. You have a family at
Yeah,
home. And I guess that was his point. You know, if you're pushing yourself forward to do something that's making you feel amazing,
yeah,
but then it means, then means you don't get to spend as much time at home, then that makes sense. But
yeah,
if you're not getting either, then it doesn't work, does it?
yeah.
How do you know, what is it that makes you go, I was happy in this role and now something's changed and I'm not? What is it that shifted, do you think?
I want to say something like in the gut happens, but I don't think it does. I think it's when it's almost like when a relationship dies, or
Mm,
a friendship is over, and the light just goes out, and then there's no joy,
mm,
and it doesn't feel right anymore.
yeah,
So you're constantly trying to find that joy around you in that environment.
mm,
So with you guys, it was you that
yeah.
I would get the joy from, but then it would be like, oh, I've got to get another
You're not,
train to the head office to sit in an office above a petrol station.
yeah.
Uh, there's no joy.
What's wrong with that? Why would you not want to do that?
Petrol fumes? I don't know. But so yeah, I think it's what gives you that resonates in your body and gives you the joy. And
Mhm.
I think that's definitely where I noticed that. And
Yeah.
we were doing great things as a creative.
Mm.
Things were really moving in the right direction, but I just knew the more business side for me wasn't right for me at that
Yeah.
point.
Then how do you, so at that point you knew it was
Mm,
an instant thing.
mm,
And if I can remember correctly, I think you then handed in your resignation quite quickly
I did,
after
yeah.
that moment. Did you know what you were going to be doing next? Or was it just a whim, I'm going to go and let's see what happens?
Absolutely not.
That's wild to
I
me.
had no idea. And that's why I have to make a change. Like I
Mm.
have no, especially at that time, I put it into a perspective of if my job had evaporated as a hairdresser, I know I'd survive, because
Mm.
I knew I'd be able to get a clientele again,
Yeah.
and I would be able to earn money. So that's the risk I took.
Yeah.
I worked from my spare room for the first 6 months.
Mm.
I just rebuilt my clientele,
Mm.
threw myself into self-employment, and ultimately what I was looking for was the freelance salons that are now, where you've got co-working spaces, but they just didn't exist at that
Yes.
point.
Yes.
So I wanted to work with brands that resonated with me. I wanted to just get back to the core of what I was good at, which was doing hair,
Mm-hmm.
and not sitting in a boardroom,
Yeah.
and making decisions where it killed creativity,
Yeah.
So actually to be my own boss and be able to do what I wanted to do, that's where I was at. And yeah, I was very quick to make that decision. I think I went away for the weekend with Ollie to his folks, and I was just like, I just need to do this. I even wrote the email at that weekend, and then it was done.
Mm.
Um, but that, yeah, I'm quite when I make a decision, I make a decision.
I have so much respect for you for that because you just went with your feeling and what would make you happy and you just went with it.
Yeah,
Like I would say it's almost like the polar opposite to me. I panic, I think too much about things and like you said it shocked you earlier, but it's so amazing that you can do that because ultimately, well, whatever you do is going to be better than what the feelings that you're feeling in that present
yeah,
moment. And that's also like so much credit to you because you obviously have so much like faith in yourself, which you should do
yeah,
because you're amazing and so skilled and you know fabulous in so many ways. So it's to be able to go, yes, I can do this. I just know it's going to work out. And I think that is not an easy skill to have, I don't think. Like or
no.
yeah, so I think that's so great. And I guess if you could I don't know if you could share with anyone like how do you get to that position?
Well, that's a
How do
hard
you
one.
trust your gut like that and just push forward and have belief in yourself?
I think I've seen too many people struggle in better the devil,
Mm,
and I find it really hard to tolerate that in other people.
Mm.
Well, no, sounds really flippant. Um, I'm very tolerating, and I run a very very beautiful team at the moment, and I've been challenged with so many indecisive people, but it's trying to get them to think about, well, if it's not making you happy, then why are you doing it?
Yeah.
I think that's ultimately what it comes down
Mm.
to. And I've seen so much misery and hurt and pain from people who've stuck in relationships that
Yeah.
aren't worth it. I've had battles with people about trying to get them to see the light, and sometimes it just you just can't you can't
Yeah.
make it happen. You can't bring the light to that situation. So I just think you have to be honest with yourself. And I'm a real believer in the word action. I use it a lot. And even when I'm procrastinating or getting stressed out about something, I did it this weekend. What is it I can do that can give me control of this situation? And the thing I have to do is action. So act on something that I can actively do that makes me feel better,
Mm-hmm.
which whether that's going for a really long walk or going to the salon and just when it's closed and just reorganizing something, if it makes me feel better, I've got control on that.
Mm-hmm.
um, and also to be around people that elevate you and give you joy, because if you're around people that don't do that, it's gonna make you stay in the dark.
Mm. And it's draining.
It's draining. Ain't got time for that.
Ain't got time for that. So, you mentioned action earlier, and I could not agree more. And I think it's almost like something that should be highlighted more.
Yeah,
Um, because it's the opposite to what you want to do. When you feel crap, when you feel shit, when you feel low, you just don't want to move, you know?
yeah,
That actually, but as you said, an action, whether it be just going for a walk or actively thinking of something you can do to improve the
yeah,
situation, is like will make you feel so much better.
yeah.
Where do you think you learnt that from?
I have to do so I can feel when the energy in my body is not serving me. So I call it, like, sometimes I feel like my body is fizzing.
Mm.
Um, it can be with anger or with ideas. It could be with so many plates spinning that I need to try and put some kind of context in what I'm doing.
Mm.
So the one thing I know, the action that I know that makes me feel better is going for a run,
Mm-hmm.
because the endorphins and the the rhythm of running and moving enables me to really process my thoughts better. So I think that's all self-taught.
Yeah.
I remember once when I was probably about 11, even younger perhaps, we'd moved into this cottage and my mum didn't want a wall there. So she just started knocking it down. Or she just put a hole in it just so that something had to happen with that wall, because now there's a hole in it. So action had to happen.
Yeah.
So I guess in a way it was kind of interbred in my childhood from my mum. And I think probably my mum's a very strong headed, she's an Aries, we're very alike to a degree. Um, and she's got loads of ideas and she just does things. And I think that's just been part of my
Mm.
upbringing. It's like, I'm going to do this now, and it happens, whether it's um, completely redecorating or whether it's uh, I remember once we were we moved into this amazing cottage. It had a big garden, and she just built a summer house out of an old shed, and she just can create anything out of nothing. So in a way, I guess it was that kind of like, well, if she can make that happen, I can make things
Mm.
happen. But it took me probably 30 years or more for me to get to that point, because if you think back to when I started hairdressing, I just was trying to find a comfortable space to be in.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas now I'm just so much more driven by action and making sure I'm creating a world and an environment for me that serves me well.
You had a lot to deal with at the beginning. I think that's
Yeah.
you're just trying to find out who you are, aren't you?
Yeah.
So that takes time. You can't be actioning everything at the same time.
No.
So you obviously left Headmasters. You
Mm-hmm.
started to create a bit more of a freelance
Mm-hmm.
space for yourself, and then, if I remember correctly, you opened a small studio,
Yeah.
which then ended up turning into a huge salon.
Yeah.
Not in the same space, but you moved on
Yeah.
from that. How did you move from the small studio to the big salon, and how where you are now?
Yeah.
And how did that feel for the Ollie that felt like he wasn't good enough and
Yeah.
couldn't get there? How amazing that must have felt, I'm sure.
I was hugely inspired by you, Siobhan, when you opened
Oh,
up your salon.
little did you know that I was
Little did you
crumbling
know.
inside.
I know we've talked about it, but we kind of almost switched around roles because I had a little studio and you had a salon, and then I
Mm.
ended up with the salon, and now you're with the studio. But um, I think, well, COVID happened. So literally just before COVID, I had my friend Alfie come and work with me at my studio,
Mm.
because working in the studio for me, I've actually struggled with, because I needed a community and I didn't have that community. And although I had a community at Rose and Wild when I came and worked with you one day a month, I think it
Hmm.
was, but it wasn't enough.
Need more.
I wanted you more. So yeah, Alfie came and joined me. COVID hit. We came out of COVID, and of course, social distancing. In my studio space, it meant that we couldn't work together. We were struggling with, we had to work in shifts, but then that I just couldn't see how that was going to be sustainable. And I just thought I need to find a bigger space. And then I found it was already a salon. It was obviously a victim of COVID because it had to shut down, and it was a deal, but it was way bigger than I anticipated.
Mm.
And
So you went from a small
stu-
two-seat studio
studio,
to two-floor
2 floor salon.
salon in
Yeah,
just after COVID.
just after COVID. Yeah,
It's very brave.
yeah. And I think again, it was having the people around you saying, you can do this.
Hmm.
Um, and that's when I met Jo Irving, and we interviewed her on our one of our very first podcasts. And I just thought, if I'm going to make this successful, I need to be coached because I can't fail. I
Mm.
think that was it. There was no option about failing
Why? Why was failing not good?
because I had to be successful at that time. That's all I could. That's all I could see it
Mm.
as. Um,
Did
and
you
yeah,
feel like you had something to prove?
if you'd asked me whether I was going to open a salon 10 years prior to that, I said absolutely categorically not going to have a salon.
Mm.
And then I was doing it. Um, I probably had wanted to prove it to myself, not delusion, but I think there's this sort of utopian world I sometimes live in
Mm.
that I think, yeah, it's achievable. And it's definitely been a ride because I've probably learnt more about business and the industry in the last 5 years than I have done in my whole career of hairdressing. I've definitely had to face figures and numbers and dealing with running very, very amazing people, but dealing with neurodivergency and imposter syndrome and um, toxicity. You know, there's a lot of things that I've had to manage that I didn't even have on my radar
Mm.
when I opened. So it's been a massive challenge.
What do you think has been the biggest challenge while having the salon?
I think because when we came out of COVID, hairdressers were just championed because everyone was desperate to get their hair done. Everyone in the hairdressing industry wanted to change their work-life balance. So a freelancing space was where everybody wanted to be in. So opening that up in Brighton was a real opportunity for me. I
Mm.
got a very full team very quickly, a very busy team. So I had a very successful business very, very quickly. And I was very high on that. One thing that I had happened to me while I was in my previous employment at Headmasters, I had to have a cornea graft in one eye, and I knew I'd have to have another one in the other eye. Um, but I had my cornea graft when I was in my studio space, and I definitely went back to work way quicker than I should have done because I was just paranoid about earning money.
Mm.
And I don't know how I did my job with the vision I had, but I did it.
Mm.
And then it was due for me to have another one done when I'd opened up the Hair Salon Collective. But I said, I'm going to do this differently this time. I'm going to give myself the time off to really heal.
Yeah.
I am. I'm not going to go into the convoluted part of the eye operation, but not to be around any free radicals. So hair, being an aircon environment, um, I had it has to heal. And I think the difficulty with it is from the outside, I look like a perfectly functioning human being,
Mm.
but my body's gone through a lot of trauma, and I'm effectively my eyesight's screwed for a bit of time as well. I decided I was going to kind of push back and take 3 months off from definitely doing clientele, but to give myself time to heal, but definitely not be in the business in the salon for a month. 3 months before that, Ollie and I lost our dog Brian, who was our baby. He was our child. He was our everything. Um, and I probably at the time didn't realize I was really grieving.
Mm.
I didn't realize how much of an impact that had on my relationship with my husband because he wasn't happy in his job.
Mm-hmm.
Then he wasn't happy at home because he had nothing
Yeah.
to really grasp onto.
And you're being distracted.
I'm being distracted with the
Mm.
business. I was then having an eye operation. So I did see this time off to kind of just recenter myself a little
Mm-hmm.
bit and spend some time with my husband. And then I came back to the work environment for a meeting, and all of a sudden, the culture changed in the salon. I felt like an imposter in my own business.
Mm.
I felt like everything was crumbling around me. And my anxiety and my imposter syndrome just hit me like a brick wall. And I spiraled.
Mm.
I really, really spiraled. I've had no control over myself, the business. And it's incredible what your brain tells you
Mm.
because I totally created this whole new narrative that everything was failing. And I had to go back to coaching with Joe. I got therapy.
Mm.
Um, I had to really work hard on trying to sleep
Mm.
and try and find my feet again. And that was by far one of the hardest things I've ever had to navigate.
What do you think? Was that having too much time away? So too much time with your own thoughts? Do you think it, what do you think kind of instigated that? What's
It,
the catalyst?
the catalyst was coming back. There was toxicity. There was a toxic environment within the salon.
Mm-hmm.
Some plants, some seeds had been planted that weren't true.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came back in, I was suddenly faced with a lot of untruths.
Yeah.
So I was then having to unpick that
Yes.
and kind of plead my case,
Mm.
which, I was also recovering from a major operation and
Mm.
also dealing with grief.
Mm.
And I think because those sort of pillars in your life, your friendship, your work, your relationship, I can't remember what they all are, but
Mm.
all of them were rocked.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I felt
Nothing felt sturdy.
nothing felt sturdy. So I
Mm.
felt I couldn't trust people. I felt
Mm.
very unhinged,
Mm.
and quite rightly I was. So I had to work really hard to get myself back. And I think, I think sometimes when people see people being very successful and being successful very quickly,
Mm.
that can turn quite quickly to uh,
Jealousy.
jealousy
Mm.
and poison. And that's definitely what happened. And um, it affected friendships. It affected my position as a salon owner and the relationships I created with my team. I had to really pull back and take the friendship away from it and come back as a salon owner again. And remember that this utopian world has to come back to a solid foundation.
Yeah.
So I had to rebuild that.
That I think, because really, a month away shouldn't create so much like stress, really. But I guess it was a very new business for you. So
Yeah,
whatever the people and what you had put in place, you kind of had to adjust
yeah,
and make it feel more secure.
yeah,
And from what I see now, you've managed to do that.
yeah.
So you've been able to shift the pieces around and
Ultimately,
create something. So if you were to go away again for a month
yeah,
and come back, I
yeah,
think you'd feel a lot more confident
100%.
with what's been left.
I mean, ultimately, out of all of that, it was horrendous at the time, but
Mm.
I realized I hadn't focused enough on my business.
Mm.
I lived in the bubble of it being successful.
Mm-hmm.
I was very quick to pass on roles and put things to other people, which perhaps I shouldn't have done. And I was again still very flippant about money and figures and what they really meant. So in the last year and a half, 2 years, I've really learned cash flow. I've really learned the nuts and bolts of my business. I've learned where my money's going in and where my money's going out.
Mm-hmm.
I've understood the um, complexity of what, and also like the evolution of the freelancing industry now. It's within 4.5 years, it's changed so much, and having to adapt my business to work with that. But I've had to really surround myself again with people that make me
Mm.
feel great and
Mm.
lift me up.
Yeah.
You know, I always bang on about Jo Irving, but she's the one person that has been my consistency throughout the whole of that
Mhm.
as a business coach. I've also joined King Connect, which is more of a financial side of the business running.
Mhm.
So I've really, again, pushed forward and faced my fears and just really looked them in the face. And if I don't understand it, I need to learn how to
Mhm.
understand it. And that's what I've done. And that's where I am now. And I feel so much more grounded with that within the business that I can start predicting what the future looks like.
Mhm.
And now I'm thinking, right, now what is my end game? What is the end of what is the long term of this salon?
Mhm.
Where do I want to be in 10 years' time?
Mhm.
I'm 51 now, so I'll be 61. What does that look like? I can't physically work over a chair. I do 2 days a week, and even that is crippling for my back and my shoulders. So I have to look after my physical body.
Mhm.
So how long have I got of that? So running a salon, um, doing more industry events, working with people like yourself. Um, I've been invited on the British Beauty Council to kind of really invest within the industry. So those things are now like, I really want to make sure what I'm doing now is also looking after the team that I've got, because I
Mhm.
want to safeguard their future, because it's changed so much in the last 5 years. Where's it going to be in the next 5 to 10 years?
Mhm.
So yeah,
What piece of advice do you think you'd give to someone that was wanting to set up a business? Um, and things that you think have been really valuable learnings. Obviously, you've had to go through quite a
mm,
lot of hardship to get there. But
yeah.
if someone could just catapult themselves to where you are now, what tips would you give?
I think it's really important that you choose the right people to work around with you. So friendships are great, but make sure you've got your boundaries that
Mhm.
are set up within those friendships, because I will put my hand up. I did not have the boundaries. I let things just slide and move on, and I never had a point to be able to pull things back. So make sure your support network is understanding what roles people have got and what the boundaries are, and understand your finances. Those are, I think, are the most important things.
Mm.
Once you've got that, then everything else will fall into place.
Mm.
Have a really strong vision or true vision about what you want to do, and stick with it, and don't let other people sway you off that if that's going to benefit them rather than you.
Mhm.
So just keep true to yourself. And I think just make sure you're got people you can tap into that support you. So um, I have a great accountant who understands my business. She also coaches any freelancers that come on board about what it looks like to be self-employed. Um, so she understands what my business is like. So I had a chat with her. I've been speaking to her quite a few times over the last few weeks, but it just makes me feel calm and
Mhm.
happy and safe. Touching base with King Connect enables me to make sure my cash flow is on point, that I can look at the end of the year knowing that I'm going to be okay. Understanding things like corporation tax, VAT, if you're those things are so important in running a business. And as a creative, and that's what I just didn't understand at the beginning. I just thought, oh, I'll just leave that to other people.
Mm.
So if you're going to be serious about opening a salon or running a business, you have to learn those nuts and bolts, because if you don't, it can trip you up.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, a support network, people who you know are going to elevate you, you can trust, I think is the key as well.
How do you know if you can trust someone?
Bitter experience.
That's right. We could save that for another episode.
We can say that for now. I think history has to come into that. So
Mm.
my relationship with you goes a long way, and I think
Mhm.
we've worked through our industry. So I think what interestingly with us, it's because we started in the industry together, and we've experienced things within our industry that we kind of go, I don't know if I like that, or
Mm.
so someone who's got the same a good point of view as you. Hairdressers are party people, and you make great friends partying and have a lovely time.
Mm.
And I think it's knowing if those friendships work outside of the party.
Yeah.
So when you've got a drink and you're having a lovely time, you have all these great ideas, and you're like, oh, this is going to be so much fun. And actually, when it comes to it, what is that? What was that relationship?
Mm.
What does that bring together? And how does that benefit you?
Mm.
I mean, I think a friendship ultimately is a two-way street, and you have to serve each other, and that's what a beautiful friendship is all about. But if you're putting that in a work environment,
Mm.
what does that look like? and how does that benefit each other, and how do you separate your friendship from your work environment? It's always a learning curve. I just don't think I properly have the answers. I just have experience, but I think it's just knowing when you're talking to someone, you're getting the honest answer
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
So not hearing what you want to hear and being like, well, maybe you sounds great, but
Yeah.
you know, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ollie.
Thank you.
That's been just wonderful to have a bit of a deep dive into Ollie Blackaby and your journey so far. I just want you to know that I'm so proud of you. I've noticed a huge difference in you over in the last year. I think I mentioned not recently on my birthday celebrations, but yeah, there's something that's changed in you, and it's like lovely. There's a light. You have got this energy and this, yeah, this light that makes me know that I don't know, you've got the confidence that you should have had a long time ago, and you deserve to have had this whole time. And I'm so excited to see where that takes you, because I know it's going to be some amazing places, and hopefully I'll be there by your side
Yes, you will.
throughout the whole of it. Thank you very much for obviously doing this podcast with me anyway, but thank you for being so honest as always, and so vulnerable as well, because that means a lot.
Thank you.
Thank
Love
you. The Oh So Lovely Talk Show. The Oh So Lovely Talk Show. So lovely.